Hello and welcome. My name is Jess and you're listening to Legaltini, your very own sip of law school. The goal of this podcast is to give you just a taste of what it's like going to law school. Whether you're already in school, considering it, have a loved one currently experiencing the fun that is law school, or you just want to follow my journey, I'm so glad you're here. You can also follow me on Instagram at legaltini_podcast and check out my website legaltini.com. And if you enjoy the podcast, don't forget to rate and review below. Grab your Legaltini and let's take a sip. Good morning and welcome back to Legaltini. I am so glad that you're here because today I want to tell you about what I'm up to this summer. And I'm about halfway through my first half of my first summer as a first year 1L student. And it's truly, I can't believe how fast time is flying. I'm spending the first half of my summer as an associate, a summer associate at a big law firm here in Raleigh. And a lot of times people split their summers, and so they'll do 6 weeks somewhere and then 6 weeks somewhere else. So that's what I'm doing. And my first half of the summer, I am, like I said, a summer associate, and it is flying by. So I'm going to break this down into 2 podcasts because I just know it's going to be long. So this first section, I'm going to tell you about big law in general and my experience so far. And then next week, I'm going to give you tips on how to get a big law job and how to be successful in your summer role. Honestly, whatever it is, but especially big law because that's what I happen to be doing. So if you're anywhere near law school or in the legal field or friends with lawyers or just anywhere in the vicinity of the law, you'll hear this term big law, which people love to throw around, and it means different things to different people, but essentially the larger firms in the country, usually ones with over 1,000 partners worldwide or some large number. I mean, there's still some boutique firms that sort of operate at a big law level and call themselves big law, but they're definitely a little bit smaller and a little bit more niche. It's sort of this combination of size, prestige, and domination in a geographic area compared to other firms. So, it's kind of this hazy term, but people love to throw it around, so it's good to know generically what it is. They tend to offer a more comprehensive legal service and charge a pretty penny for it because it's a one-stop shop approach. A company or a corporation goes to a big law firm, they can have all their needs met there, and they don't have to jump around to different firms for whatever their different issues are. Let's say they have HR issues, and then let's say that they, have patenting issues. Let's say that they want to incorporate. I mean, a big law firm is going to be able to just handle it for them. And it may not be all at their one office location, but, they'll have their Chicago office handle that, and then their Raleigh office will handle this, and then their New York office can handle that. So big law sort of brings this benefit of being able to do everything at a really high level. And it's cool. I mean, it's a great place to get experience because you can get exposure to anything. So sounds cool, right? What does that actually mean? First, I'm going to tell you what the big law world means for a junior associate. So someone who is just after graduating, they get a job in big law, what that sort of looks like. And then I'll tell you about my personal experience so far being a summer associate in big law. So what does big law mean for young associates? Again, meaning right after you graduate, you get a big job. You do get a big job. You get a big law job. Generally what that means is long hours, a lot of pressure to be successful, and typically it means a higher starting salary, which can vary obviously quite a bit across the country, just as other salaries do. And keep in mind that those salaries are oftentimes dependent on your performance. So you have to bill a certain number of hours a year in order to basically capture your entire salary and the bonus structure that you're set up with. So an average number of hours is 1,900 hours for the year, which is quite a bit when you break that down into a weekly basis. And if you consider that you might want to take a vacation, or you might want to take some holidays off, things like that. It breaks down into having to work pretty hard when you're working. And then once you can find that balance, after a few years, you kind of know what that level of work is. But also, some firms will have not only an hourly requirement for their associates, but they'll also have a billing requirement. So that means that not only do you have to, as an associate, work certain hours and bill certain hours to your clients, you also have to collect on that time. So you don't bonus out on your salary until you actually collect those dollars, till the firm collects those dollars from the client. So that can be kind of frustrating because oftentimes that's out of your hands as an associate. You don't really have much power over your client to say, hey, you need to pay your bills. So that can be really stressful. So keep in mind also that higher salary isn't necessarily this like cha-ching guaranteed thing for you. A lot of times it's tied to bonuses based on performance and based on work product and based on hours and based on collections. So there's a lot that sort of goes into that whole, but you get paid so much more in Big Law. Yeah, but there are these sort of underlying things that you have to also consider. By long hours, I mean that you're likely on call for when clients or partners need something from you, and over time you learn those boundaries, just like in any job. You learn those boundaries and you understand, you get to know your partners better and you get to know your clients better, and you know what a true emergency is and how to predict them and how to sort of plan for them. But that doesn't happen overnight. To me, the concept of being on call is so weirdly normal because I worked in healthcare for so long, and it's just normal that healthcare facilities are open 24/7 and on Christmas and, every holiday. I can't tell you how many holidays I have spent either at a facility because I got called into work or because nobody else was able to be there, or I agreed to be there so that there was at least someone in management there. Or I was, in my parents' living room on Thanksgiving on the phone with the nurses at the facility because something was going on and I was the one that answered the phone. So in that scenario, it makes perfect sense to me that my personal life will sometimes get put on hold to handle a work issue, but there are boundaries that can be created, and you still have to get rest. And again, finding that balance just takes time, trial and error. I certainly got better at that over the years working in healthcare. And I'm sure, working in law, it'll be not a total reset, but somewhat, because this is just a different environment. So I'm prepared for finding that balance and knowing that there's going to be a bit of a learning curve there. But I say all of that. Big but here. Big Law does not have to be the worst experience just for more money. The field of law in general is stressful, and people hire lawyers for very specific purposes. So they're looking for expertise, they're looking for knowledge, and they want the peace of mind that they are doing things correctly. So those are just a few reasons, but think about when you spend the time and the money and the effort to hire an attorney, it's because you're looking for something very specific. And so when you're on the giving end of that, you have to be delivering that. You have to be providing that to your client. And so there's always going to be an element of stress there. And honestly, to me, I like that feeling of pressure to do well and to keep learning so I stay on top of my job. That's kind of what pushed me towards going to law school. So that works for me. If it doesn't work for you and you need to find something that is less, just stressful, less like on point acute stress, then I would stay clear of Big Law, at least at the beginning of your career. Perhaps later, once you're a little bit more established and you really know your boundaries already and you know the law already, I don't know that Big Law is quite as stressful as when you're a younger associate and sort of learning it and figuring it out. But, I could be wrong about that because I'm not a seasoned attorney. So, stay tuned on if I hear that from anybody. Also, caveat to all of this is that if you find a firm that's supportive and has great attorneys, you will still be stressed, but you'll get the training and the support you need and the resources you need. Don't get me wrong, hand-holding is still not likely, and you should be prepared to hit the ground running. But honestly, let's not view that as a gravestone, but an opportunity. Think of it as a huge testament to you that someone is trusting you with this responsibility and thinks you can do it. So that's big law generally for a young associate. The general vibes. But what about summers and during law school? So for me, I started a few weeks ago, and so far so good. Everyone at the firm has been extremely welcoming, supportive. I have my own office next to the other summer intern who is from another school in the area. So that's been neat to hear about the differences in our experiences at the different schools. And, so we both have our own office and we don't really do work together. We're not really collaborating on work, but we're certainly both working, simultaneously next to each other. So there's quite a bit of, what are you doing? And how are you setting this up? Have you had to do this yet? Do you remember what they said about this? So there's a lot of interaction between the two of us, but it's not, we're not tasked with the same things. Obviously, that would sort of be a waste of time, and we're not really collaborating on much. There is one project where we're both tasked with different things about the same litigation. So that's been kind of fun to be able to be like, what are you finding? And sort of share with each other. So I guess on one project we're not really collaborating on our task, but we're working towards the same goal of litigation on this, like the same piece of litigation. So that has been kind of fun. And it is interesting. So there's only two summer associates at this law firm. And what I've heard about some summer experiences in big law is that they've got 7 to 10 summer associates. And I kind of feel like that's how they paint it in the movies, is that it's this massive group of people who are all competing with each other and trying to stamp each other out and, push each other down. And gosh, that's just not been my experience at all. It's been really kind of great, supportive and helpful. And I like the other guy that I work with. I mean, it's not competitive, and I don't get the impression that they're pitting us against each other at all. So it's been really positive, just the general mood and sort of vibe of everything that I've experienced so far. Things that I've been able to work on, a huge variety, which is exactly what I wanted. So it's really exciting. For example, last week I incorporated a company. So this is like corporate law. I issued stock options and, just a lot of like corporate sort of document preparation. And that's fascinating because I know very little about it, but I have learned a lot, and it's cool to see. And then it's fun to have a finished product so quickly. With litigation, it takes months. It takes just a long, long time. With corporate law, it's like, oh, here you go. This one's done now. And you kind of get to like stamp it as done and move on, which is, I'm very not task oriented, but I like to-do lists. I like crossing things off. So it's fun for me to be able to do that. What else did I do? I researched election campaign laws for another partner. I drafted witness questions for an interview with some employees of a client that we represent. Like I said, I'm working on this litigation case, and I've been working on a timeline of events and kind of getting into all the evidence and the discovery, and it just is really interesting. Certainly lots of research has been done. I've been researching finding case law in support of objections for discovery, which is really cool. So it's just been all over the place. And for me, that's exactly what I needed, because I'm not totally sure yet what kind of law I want to do. And while I've worked in healthcare and health law seems to sort of be calling me, I'm also really open to what variety of law that I do, because even in healthcare, there's 1,000 directions to go. You can do litigation, you can do corporate, you can do compliance, you can do regulatory. I mean, there's 100,000 ways to go, and that can be a little bit overwhelming. So it's really great to get a broad variety of experiences in this summer internship so that I can start to cross things off my list. And I can't say I've really crossed anything major off my list. The only thing I can say is probably I'm not interested in criminal law, but I haven't even done criminal law at this it's just kind of funny. I'm like crossing things off my list that I'm not even doing. But that's what, your summer is for. And even if I'm not getting exposure to certain projects within that, I'm talking to attorneys, they're sharing experiences. We go to lunch a few times a week and I meet with different people, and it's a great way to get exposure to lots of different areas, even if it's not the areas that you're actually doing tasks in. So that's something that I'll talk about next week, is meeting with the partners and how to really make the most of this experience, because for a lot of us, it's short, it's 6 weeks. And so you have to really target and make the most of this time, because it's going to fly by, I promise, because it's presently flying by for me. That's all that I have for you this week, but stay tuned next week for more on Big Law, how to get a Big Law summer associate job, and how to be successful in whatever you're doing over the summer. Thanks so much for listening. I'm Jess, and this is Legaltini, your very own sip of law school.